Welcome to a Nothing from Nothing production. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Christopher with Bill Turley, and this is the Junction Podcast, a podcast about growing up in Brooklyn in the 1970s and 80s. We're hoping to protect the names of the innocent as well as the extremely guilty, and there were plenty of those. Well, here goes. Welcome back to the Brooklyn Junction. I'm here with Bill Turley, and today's episode is going to focus on something that might be a little alien to the kids of today, and that was going to the movies which dominated so much of our time back in the 70s and 80s. And we're going to reference some of the great movie theaters that no longer exist in Brooklyn, some of those grand palaces that would probably surprise and shock some of today's youth in terms of its size and grandeur. And then we're going to focus on some late-night movie experiences, including the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which was something that we spent way too many Saturdays enjoying. With that, we'll start right at the beginning. Bill, why don't you kick us off?
So, Mark, do you remember the very first time you went to a movie theater?
Yes, I went to see The Jungle Book, and I'd always walk out of that crying because Baloo would get separated from the big, I guess, was it a bear?
Baloo was the bear.
Mowgli, Baloo and Mowgli,
Mowgli,
and
yeah.
I loved it so much that my father would take me, over there on Flatbush Avenue. He'd go, I'm going to be at the Glen. You're only 8 years old, but you're going to sit and watch this movie by yourself.
Okay, well, it's a great babysitter. Yeah, I think the very first time I went to the movies, I was probably, I don't know, maybe about 5 years old. And I know it was the Marine Theater on, and Flatbush and Flatlands, right? It was near St.
Yep.
Thomas Aquinas. Yeah. And I think the deal was there was this kid that lived across the street from me, and his aunt worked as an usher at the Marine. And that was the deal. Like we both went there to the movies, and she was able to keep an eye on us, And but I remember the name of the film. It was called Robinson Crusoe on Mars. And then, so I remember the experience. I didn't know what the hell was going on in the movies and, in the film, and I remember seeing it. It was on television years later. It's like, wow, I was 5 and I sat through that. And it's like, oh, yeah. But I remember my older brother taking me to see like the 10 Commandments and I think the greatest story ever told, which is about the life of Jesus. And it's like, it's typical, Catholic families taking their children to, religious movies. Ben-Hur was another one. That was in Panavision, right? But I remember those, the two movies I just mentioned. I saw that at the Loews Kings on Flatbush Avenue, which was a very majestic theater. It was really, and I know they've refurbished it since it was like a church at one point, and but it really was a beautiful, beautiful place. And I think I may have even seen Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid there with one of my buddies. His name was Dennis. And you know what? It was the first time that my mother let me go to the movies, with one of my friends and without adult supervision. And it was probably like, I don't know, $2 back then, $1.75 or something like that. But yeah, and I don't know, did you have your graduation from Nazareth at the Loews Kings? Because that was like they always had it there. Well, mine was at Brooklyn College, but I think a lot of the ceremonies were at the Loews Kings.
No, I don't remember that. I just remember these huge movie theaters, right? And you'd see one movie. There wasn't like 16 different multiplexes didn't exist, right?
You could stay there all day too.
Yeah, because they would play all 9 Planet of the Apes. And you'd sit in that front row, right? And you'd watch the entire Planet of the Apes story. Maybe there was 6. At the end of the day, your eyes were like you'd been underwater with chlorine. They'd be like blinking. And at times you get so damn tired, you'd lay on the ground, and you'd come up with just
juji fruits, black juji fruits all over your back.
Good one, Johnny. Good one.
Oh, you know, I
Nobody
remember.
liked the licorice, the black licorice juji fruits. They'd eat all the cherry ones and all that stuff.
Going back to the Marine Theater, I remember my older sister taking me and Tom to see The Sound of Music at the Marine Theater. Another big Catholic movie for obvious reasons.
The hills are alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. We used to see like all the Bond movies. Like they would literally play, and we'd watch all the Bond movies. And I actually had a learning disabled uncle, Pat, lovely man. And when I was a kid, he was kind of the babysitter, and he would take us to, all the Bond movies, and he would bring us to the old serials. Like there'd be like, in Manhattan, there'd be this one theater, and it had an emotional attachment to watch the first real Batman kind of serial, and Flash Gordon. We're too young to have experienced serials, which were the short kind of films that were showed, and they were like superhero type films before the actual main feature. And the irony wrapped in it is that there was some really creative action films, right? And within the creative action films, they found like this one series, and almost every cool action scene of Indiana Jones was ripped off, from this. I forgot what show it was.
Oh yeah, nothing's really new. Yeah.
Nothing's really new. It's like even the ball coming down, like the huge boulder coming down, coming at Indy, when he's got to pull the golden statue off or whatever it was. It was right out of this serial and then George Lucas admitted it later, But the movie theater experience was like it'd be tons of kids. It'd be one movie, and the parents would just drop you off generally, and give you $1. You get maybe one big soda and some popcorn. But the whole day thing was common, where you go see. There's always a double feature, and then you'd sit and watch it again.
Oh yeah, of course. And the thing is, our neighborhood had so many theaters. If you just walk down Flatbush Avenue, there were just so many movie theaters from end to end. I can remember. So now the Marine Park Theater. I know it was actually called the Marine, I think.
That was right on.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But around the corner, right across from St. Thomas Aquinas, wasn't there a theater called the Brook? The Brook, right?
Brook.
Yeah,
right. There was the Marine, the Brook. Then you went towards where I lived, which was the College movie theater. Right on the corner.
College theater was my favorite theater. It was, and at one point, you could see movies for $1 there.
Well, it had fallen on rough times towards the end of my tenure there, and it was showing porno films.
The College theater, really?
Yeah,
yeah. I don't really remember that. But
my friend Ken would go to them. It was kung fu movies, and then it was porno movies. It went downhill, Bill.
Yeah,
and you'd already probably left.
But down, if you went further down Flatbush Avenue, I remember there was something called the Rialto.
Yep.
Yeah, that was maybe around.
Of course, Kings Plaza had a movie theater.
Kings Plaza had a duplex, right?
Yeah, you have to go up, and it was two sides of the building.
I remember seeing Jaws there.
That's an extraordinary. I mean, we should do a thing about cinema of that period, which I still think, and we seem to be. I hope we're not consciously, myopic in that, the best periods for music, in my opinion, are the 60s, 70s into the 80s. The best periods of American cinema is anything prior to 2000. You know what I mean?
Right.
The 90s, the 80s, the 70s, But there was unbelievable movies. And then remember, Jesus, we're really going to age ourselves. It used to be G. Then it used to be R.
Okay.
And then it was X, right? And then they came up with PG.
Right. And did you just mention M, that for mature audiences?
I don't remember M.
Yes, M was for mature audiences. Now, hold on a second. There was an even more stringent rating system that most Catholic parents abided by, which was, do you remember a newspaper called The Tablet?
Of course. Oh
Right.
my God.
And do you
Yeah.
remember they had movie ratings there?
Oh, that's so true.
Right. So I don't remember that, but I remember the categories were like, there was something that had to do with morally objectionable, or, and they really got into minutia. It would be like morally objectionable in part, for some, morally objectionable for all. And then there was C. Do you know what C stood for?
No.
Condemned. There was a category in the tablet that, and I know, like, my parents didn't really do this, but like I know some parents would like, what movie are you going to see, boys? We're going to see Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. All right, hold on a minute, and they'd consult the tablet and
And
I
you've got
don't know.
you've got a sinister coffee clutch of virgins, right? Telling you can't go see Marathon Man. You know what I mean? And I do know what you mean. There was, but that it's the '70s cinema was so gritty. The movies were reflecting that. I just remember Wet Streets. Wet dark streets.
Yeah.
Even Saturday Night Fever and a lot of the movies that we went to see. The concept of sitting in a movie theater for 7 hours, and you'd even like stay after, you'd even stay after, or you sneak in and it was 50 cents. And we used to sneak into the Marine, right? They used to have like a side entrance that was
Okay.
broken. And so like 10 kids would get like pile into them. They wait till the usher wasn't paying attention. And the usher was specifically a pimple face, And I remember I remember seeing Saturday Night Fever for the first time and just being, like, oh my God, this is such a different thing. But it was also portraying people we knew. Very
Oh yeah,
Brooklyn
that was
people.
that was pretty realistic, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it is? It's all of that. This is why Brooklyn is so unique in many ways, isn't that Brooklyn and New York, itself. Uh, you'd have to say that it's inordinately represented in American cinema. French Connection's based in New York. I mean, these are the great movies at the time.
Taxi
The
Driver.
Godfather, Taxi Driver,
Taxi
Godfather
Driver,
1 and 2.
Goodfellas, yeah, all the Scorsese
Yeah, and New
films.
York had a special. There's got to be some reason somebody will write to me about that. New York is it's the first major modern city, perhaps, but there is such an enormous amount of incredible filmmaking, and they're all amongst my favorite
Yeah.
films. But I remember also the late night experience, right? We used to go see. We were led boring lives at times, and it was probably a break from just constantly
Well,
having fun.
I
We go
I
into
I remember that you and my brother were big fans of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I know on Friday nights, the two of you and whoever else you went there with, you guys used to go into the Waverly, right, on 6th Avenue in Greenwich Village.
absolutely.
And it was like a regular thing. And I went with you guys one time and I was like, this is the craziest friggin' thing I've ever seen, but it was fun, but I don't know if I could do it every weekend.
Well, it grew to the point where people would say all the lines of the dialogue
Right.
along with the characters, which was annoying.
Yeah.
People would show up and they would be dressed as the characters.
The characters, yeah.
And
So was that a midnight show?
it was a midnight show.
Wow.
So
okay.
you get out of there and they didn't care what you bought in. You could have bought in, a case of beer, somehow. You bring in your beer, you sit and drink there and I mean, it was a great soundtrack. I was surprised that the guy never really did anything else
Oh yeah.
because he wrote some really
Yeah.
good songs, but it really was an extraordinary work of art. I mean, it was like a rock opera and it was entertaining. It was very edgy. Which was pretty cool because I think Dr. Frankenfooter, who was the Dr. Frankenstein, played by Tim Curry, he wants to create the ultimate Frankenstein, which is a big, beautiful, blonde bodybuilder, and he's so camp in that, in the role. Meatloaf's in the movie. Susan Sarandon, who's absolutely gorgeous in this movie. is in that movie. And I think the guy was in Ken Boss. I forgot the individual who's had quite a career who played the straight dad that shows up at Frankenfurter's haunted mansion. But ideally, what it is remembered for, what it should be remembered for, is not just the edginess, but the music was just really, really a great group of songs, and it was something that so much of us did. You know, I probably saw it about 8 times. If you were bored, there was nothing to do, you went to Rocky Horror, right? But the thing that is part of the cultural milieu is everybody went to the movies. Every generation went to the movies. The quality of the movies were off the charts. And we'll do that in another episode. But bottom line, the movie experience was quite a special experience for all of us at the time. And, you know, there was also the rock stuff, experiences, which I don't think exist today. Maybe the kids go to the movies and watch 2 movies and drink and all that stuff. But we used to go to the Graham Theater. You remember that was far for you.
The Graham, yeah, that was in
Yep.
Gerritsen Beach.
And you'd go to the
Okay.
Graham, and they had amazing, high-quality bootleg copies of major movies, like the Beatles' Let It Be, the Rolling Stones' Ladies and Gentlemen, the Grateful Dead movie, which was astonishing, right? And it would be like $1. I don't know how these places made any money, but it'd be rock shows every Friday or Saturday night, starting at midnight. And you'd go there and you'd see, they would concoct clips together. You know what I mean? That had floated around, which there was no internet. So I don't know how they all got stitched together. So you'd see like almost what we call today modern rock videos. You'd have Cream doing Sunshine of Your Love, followed by Dylan doing Tangled Up in Blue, followed by Lennon doing Instant Karma. And I was stunned because you didn't see them anywhere else. They're all readily available now, but it was such a treat to see your favorite artist doing his promotional clip in high quality film. And
Right.
because it was so rare. You didn't see, once John Lennon did Instant Karma on Top of the Pops, you never saw it again. But they had put these things and stitched them all together. And it used to be an amazing experience. Did you make it out to the Graham? Because that was really far for you. Oh, no, you moved to Avenue T.
No, I've been to the Graham. Sure.
You
Yeah.
moved to Avenue T, right? So did you ever get to the Ziegfeld to see like Apocalypse Now and stuff like that?
I've been to the Ziegfeld, yeah, in Manhattan. But you know what's a really cool thing now is like people are starting to go to the movies again. And it's really, during COVID, it was just, I think a lot of theaters closed. They were just decimated by it. But I am in New York City, I am starting to see the theaters fill up again. People are starting to go because, it really is a fun night out.
Yeah,
Just to get out of your house, go to the movies. I mean, look, we have all these home theaters now, these big screen TVs with surround sound and everything else. And, all these, uh, where you can enjoy a film in the comfort of your home. But there's the experience of going out and being, with other people and listening to the audience reaction and hearing people laugh and gasp and whatever. There's something to be
Yeah.
said for that. Because, I remember my father saying something about how, there were movies that he saw when he was younger. Obviously, he didn't see them on television. He saw them in the theater and he thought they were hilarious. And, he said that, seeing them on television, it just didn't seem as funny, and he attributed that to the fact that you were with an audience and, everyone would laugh as a group, When you're sitting watching it alone on television or just with 1 or 2 people, you don't get that same kind of
Well, it was
vibe,
21-inch TVs, right, were the biggest you could get. And because I was in Radio Shack, I had it all concocted to a stereo, but it was only 21 inches. And people I knew would come over to watch rock shows in my house on the TV when the VCRs came out. But we have to remember there was, VCRs are probably something that they're antiquated. CD players, DVD players, Blu-ray players, they all came after this. So,
You mean
yeah, I mean,
TiVo?
they're all,
I had a
yeah,
TiVo
they all
box,
came
but,
after
yeah.
this, right? And so the movie theater experience was a unique thing, but I also think it was a community thing and it was a good thing. And it was Callan and I, that was our thing to do on Saturday nights. We go see a new movie. And it's a whole nother subject about the dearth of quality movies now, which unless I'm not looking in the right places, the streaming experience, even though I have an 85-inch TV here with the surround sound stuff going down, it's nothing like sitting in a good movie theater. And even the movie theaters that I go to now don't have the same. I mean, those are big grand ballrooms almost. They would. I don't know how much they would sit. They would seat like 200 people maybe or something. And the surround sound, it had reached a peak. But unfortunately, COVID did damage to a lot of industries, including I think Regal Cinemas filed for bankruptcy. But it was that with
Yeah.
all the stuff that we talk about on this podcast, and there's been some negative things. That was, a high point of entertainment, and you not only had this.
Well, I got to tell you, I saw Oppenheimer in the theater, and it was amazing. It really was. I think it's a much better experience to see a movie like that in the theater than on your home screen.
I totally agree. And the other thing about it is you've got Oppenheimer, which was, I agree, astonishing. If you go back in that period of the heyday of the 1970s, there's like 5 or 6 great Oppenheimers. I mean, that goes all the way up into the early 90s, in my opinion, right? There's 10 good movies where you're like, oh, which one can I pick as being the best one, Today, is there two? I might be wrong. I might not be looking in the right places. I have all the necessary subscriptions. I try to find more obscure films, but there seem to me, the art of cinema, like had a peak in that period. And it was, and all the way, I don't want to sound like I'm just thinking about when I was in my formative years. I think in the early 90s, movies, they had like one year where it was Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank. I mean, they had great movies, Casino, Goodfellas in the 90s, I believe. So I think that something's happened between streaming service, right? The lack of they had these superhero movies. After you've seen one or two, they're all the same plot line, right? And
Right.
they're unwatchable. And there's nothing wrong with them. They're great for little kids. I mean, they've actually rebooted Spider-Man like 4 times. And to me, putting all the money because they make so much money from those movies because the children still want to go experience that. But, I hope there's a mini renaissance of the movie theater experience.
So just getting back to our wealth of theaters in the Flatbush area, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Astor, which was right next to Erasmus High School, and also the Kenmore on Church Avenue, just off Flatbush, which is I think I remember seeing Death Wish there.
Wow. If you ever look at that today, it is so poorly acted. It's like, it's so stiff, the acting. I should mention that some of the acting until the 70s was
Oh, but that movie came at just the right time in New York, and that the mid '70s there, where the crime was out of control, and
oh yeah, yeah. You've got if people don't know the story, you have a vigilante, which actually was personified by Bernie Getz years later. He only had one incident where he shot a bunch of kids on a train who were trying to rob him. But Death Wish was the context of the story was horrendous, where Charles Bronson's family gets killed in a violent crime, and he goes out on chasing bad guys. So it's the Batman story too. It's the
of
revenge,
course,
vengeance story, and that always touches people because people get so angry at injustices. And it came at the right time because there was I always remember Clockwork Orange, right? And if you know this backstory of Anthony
Oh,
Burgess, right?
yeah.
His I think his family was killed or robbed or some very serious crime. So he wrote a story about these kind of stylish roaming gangs. And at the end, he has the criminal in bed, and he's being fed high quality yogurt by both the right and the left wing politicians, right? because it served their purposes. So the metaphor is that we coddle crime, and I think we're doing it again. That's just, again, I don't want to get political, but I think we're doing. Yeah, I
God,
know
no.
I don't want to, but my point is, I think you had these undercurrent of anger movies like that, vengeance movies, and it was in in the black community
course,
too,
yeah.
with Shaft and others, because the crime had grown out of control, and it doesn't seem like there was any active checks and balances that were creating any kind of solution to the problem, you know. But yeah, and I just remember, just to stay on that note, my father-in-law used to talk about the movie theaters that were closer into East New York were like, was it the Church Theater or Church Street, right? Where
There was a theater on Church Avenue. It escapes me right
but it
now,
was
the
like
name
the
of the
big
theater.
wraparound staircase. It was like the
Oh
woman
yeah.
with this famous 20s film star comes down. I'm ready for my close up, you know, it was grand and beautiful. And it was,
Well, the
I
Loews
think that
Kings
was
was
the
like
one.
that, and there was which I mentioned before. There was also a theater in Bensonhurst like that called the Loews Oriental.
I remember that too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a spectacular
Well,
theater.
it's bottom line. Go
And
ahead.
there was there was a theater on Coney Island Avenue, I remember, called the Kent, and then there was the
They were
Kingsway
everywhere.
on
They were
Kings
everywhere, like
Highway
Irish
in
bars and
Queens. Yeah.
pizzerias. They were everywhere. They were everywhere. And they were, the thing that was beautiful about it was such an escape. And that started in the 30s, man. That whole,
Oh yeah, even
yeah,
before
the
that, I
20s with the
think,
silent
in the
films,
silent
right?
era.
So you had something that ran in a fairly dominant mode. It was dying off a little bit before COVID, but COVID crushed it almost, right? But so that had a good run, the 30s to 2020 or something. That's almost like that's 90 years now. I love it to return because, like you said, it's a fantastic community experience. The good news is it's beginning to come back a bit, not like it was where the whole family would go on a Friday or a Saturday. But I think that the physical act of going to the movies with a group of kids or adults is slowly coming back, just to get people out of the house post-COVID. And I hope it comes back in a roaring fashion. So with that, Bill, let's
Yeah.
take us out.
Well, everyone, thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to comment, like, and reply. And we are the Brooklyn Junction, and Mark, I'll talk to you
Subscribe,
soon.
subscribe, subscribe. Just sliding away. Written, recorded, and performed by William Turley.